The restaurant was filled with laughter, soft music, and happy couples celebrating their evenings, but at one small table near the window, a woman sat completely alone, trying to hide the tears forming in her eyes. She kept checking her phone, pretending she was busy, even though the truth was painfully obvious. The person she had been waiting for was never coming. She had dressed carefully, chosen her favorite outfit, and convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. But after 45 minutes of silence, one cruel message appeared on her screen: "Sorry, something came up. Maybe another time." She stared at those words, feeling her heart sink. Another disappointment. Another reminder that sometimes people only saw what they wanted from her, never who she truly was. And then I walked over to her table and said the words that changed both of our lives forever. "You don't have to sit alone." Before I continue this emotional story, if you believe kindness still matters and that everyone deserves second chances, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Echoes of Hope. Your support helps more stories like this reach people who need them. My name is Kalen. I was never the kind of person who believed in perfect moments or movie-like coincidences. I was just an ordinary man trying to rebuild my life after years of mistakes, regrets, and lessons I learned the hard way. That evening, I had stopped at the restaurant after a long day of work. I had planned to eat dinner quickly and go home, but something about the woman sitting alone caught my attention. Not because she was beautiful, although she was. Not because she looked sad, although she clearly was. It was because she was still trying to be kind to someone who had hurt her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't complaining. She wasn't making a scene. She simply sat there, quietly accepting disappointment. And for some reason, that broke my heart. I remembered what it felt like to sit alone while the world moved around me. I remembered losing people, losing opportunities, and losing faith that anyone cared. So I walked over. The woman looked up when I approached, quickly wiping her eyes and forcing a small smile. "I'm sorry," I said gently. "I don't mean to bother you." She looked confused. "Do I know you?" I shook my head. "No. But I noticed you've been sitting here alone for a while." Her expression changed immediately. She looked embarrassed. "Oh. I'm fine," she replied. That was the sentence people always said when they weren't fine. I smiled softly and pointed toward the empty chair. "Maybe you are. But you still don't have to sit alone." For a few seconds, she didn't say anything. Then she laughed quietly, a small laugh filled with sadness. "That's probably the nicest thing anyone has said to me today." She introduced herself as Soraya. She told me she had agreed to the blind date because her friends kept telling her she was too focused on work and needed to open her heart again. She had spent years taking care of everyone else, building a career, supporting her family, and pretending she didn't miss having someone beside her. "I guess I thought maybe tonight would be different," she said. I understood that feeling more than she knew. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't being alone. It's hoping you won't be anymore. We talked for hours that night. Not about perfect dreams or fake versions of ourselves. We talked about real things. The mistakes we wished we could undo. The people we missed. The moments that changed us. Soraya told me she had spent most of her life trying to prove she was strong. Everyone saw her as successful, confident, and independent. But nobody saw how tired she was. Nobody saw how often she went home to a quiet apartment and wondered if anyone would ever truly choose her. I told her about my own past. Years earlier, I had been the person who walked away when things got difficult. I thought success was about winning and never showing weakness. But life had a way of teaching me. I lost friendships. I lost relationships. I lost the version of myself I thought I needed to become. The person sitting across from me that night wasn't someone who had everything figured out. I was someone who had finally learned what mattered. The strange thing was, after that night, we didn't rush into anything. We didn't pretend one dinner solved every problem. Instead, we became friends. Real friends. The kind who check on each other after a hard day. The kind who remember small details. The kind who listen. Over the next few months, I discovered things about Soraya that most people never noticed. She loved old movies because they reminded her of childhood. She always carried extra snacks because she believed nobody should feel hungry. She secretly wrote letters to people she cared about but rarely gave them away because she was afraid of being too emotional. She had the biggest heart of anyone I knew. But she also carried a deep fear. A fear that everyone eventually left. And slowly, I realized my greatest challenge wasn't convincing her that I cared. It was convincing her that she deserved someone who stayed. One rainy evening, we were walking through the city after dinner when she suddenly stopped. "I need to tell you something," she said. I looked at her. She took a deep breath. The reason I was at that restaurant wasn't just because my friends wanted me to date. I waited. I almost canceled. Why? She looked away. Because I've gotten used to disappointment. Sometimes it feels safer to expect people to leave. Those words stayed with me. Because I knew what she meant. Fear can become so familiar that hope starts feeling dangerous. A few weeks later, I invited her to a small gathering with my friends. I wanted her to see that she was becoming part of my life. But that night, something unexpected happened. One of my friends asked Soraya about her career, and she started talking about a project she had been working on for years. The room became quiet. Everyone listened. She had created a program that helped struggling young people find training and opportunities. I watched her speak with passion, and I realized something. The woman who thought nobody saw her had been quietly changing lives. She didn't need someone to save her. She just needed someone to notice her. But life tested us again. A few months later, I received an opportunity to move to another city for work. It was everything I had worked for. A chance to start fresh. A chance to prove myself. But when I told Soraya, I saw the fear in her eyes. She smiled and congratulated me, but I knew. She thought I was leaving. She thought I was becoming another person who walked away. For the first time since meeting her, I didn't know what to say. Because I was afraid too. Afraid that choosing my future meant hurting someone who had become important to me. For days, we barely talked. And the silence felt worse than any argument. Finally, I went back to the same restaurant where we first met. The same window. The same table. And when Soraya walked in, she looked surprised. "I knew you'd be here," she said quietly. I smiled. "Why?" "Because this is where you first showed me kindness." I looked at her and realized something. That night wasn't just about me helping her. She had changed me too. She had reminded me that success means nothing if you have nobody to share it with. "I got the opportunity," I said. She nodded. "I know. But I'm not running away." Her eyes filled with emotion. "I thought." "I know what you thought," I interrupted gently. "But I need you to understand something. Staying because I'm afraid of losing you isn't love. And leaving because I'm afraid of commitment isn't love either." She listened carefully. Real love means we choose each other, even when life gets complicated. Tears rolled down her face. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. Because for once, someone wasn't promising a perfect life. Someone was promising honesty. The next year wasn't always easy. There were challenges. Arguments. Difficult decisions. But every time life tested us, we remembered the beginning. A lonely woman. A stranger who offered a seat. A simple sentence that created a connection. You don't have to sit alone. Years later, people still ask me how our story started. They expect something dramatic. A grand gesture. A perfect moment. But the truth is, our story started with something simple. Someone saw another person hurting and decided to care. Soraya still laughs when she remembers that terrible blind date. She says it was the worst night of her life. But I always remind her. It was also the night everything changed. Because sometimes the people who enter our lives unexpectedly become the people we never knew we needed. And sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can become the beginning of a story that lasts forever. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to engage with this video. Like, share, subscribe, and tell us in the comments what kindness means to you. Your support helps keep these meaningful stories alive. Before the ending, I have one special request. Comment, kindness changes everything, if you believe a small act can create a big difference in someone's life. Because somewhere out there, someone might be sitting alone, waiting for someone to notice. And maybe all they need is one person brave enough to walk over and say, "You don't have to sit alone."